Good afternoon. I thought I'd like to start with this slide, just to give you an idea of what our organizational chart looks like for public services. That changed a couple of years ago. Most important aspect, I just wanted to know who the contact people are. John Parker, John Parker's for street, solid waste, and stormwater. Mike Harris is facilities, parks, grounds, and motor fleet. And David Mintz handles distribution and collections. And then Nate Lindsay is our water plant and wastewater plant, ORC. So also, I'd just like you to know that we have a work order system that we evaluate, we consistently evaluate to make sure that the way we're doing business best serves us. I'd just like to note too that people can access us through the service request on our landing page for the village. That's the easiest way and probably the quickest way to get response from us. There's been some changes in the phone tree, and I'm not sure those would get to us as quickly as the service requests do. You show a service request when you put it in, depending on what area it's in, goes to each of those superintendents, and they field them almost immediately. So that's the best way to get service from public services. I'm going to be covering quite a bit of information today, so what I'll do is stop and ask for questions after each topic. First topic I want to talk to you about was North Carolina Administrative Code NC2T. It has to do with the 80-90% treatment capacity rule. In the village, what we do is we look at the highest 3 months of the year. We wrote a letter about 2006, I guess it was, where McKim and Creed had represented us. They wrote a letter to the state saying that if we go by the 12-month rule, which we exceed 20% of our 12-month flows for our permitted flow of 300,000 gallons, that being a resort community, we probably never get there. So the letter was requesting was us to use June, July, and August. And if you see here under the notes, the average flows 2020 through 2022, you'll see our largest flows have been this past July. Our daily average was 261, 637. So that in itself is, you could look at it, say it's 87%, but really, if you go to the next slide, please. You look at the last 5 years, have the percentages in the column on the left. You see 2018 was 74%, 19, 65. And then we did exceed the monthly average in 2020 of 80%, which triggers the 80-20 rule, 80-90 rule. Then it went down for 21 and again down for 22. Now the trigger for the 90% is an average of 3 months. So we're kind of backed off that. Right now, we're looking at about 35 residential REUs projected to be used annually. We figure we have about 120 to 140 REUs before we hit the 90% ceiling and before we hit build out for the expansion. At 90%, we're required by the state to be under contract for the plant expansion. Right now, we are working with Aqua Aerobics and McKim and Creed, and we're looking at using aerobic granular sludge, which is a little bit different than the SBRs we have right now. But utilizing this new technology, we feel comfortable that we're using almost the same footprint that we're using now. We do have some setback rules that we're going to have to work with, but as far as increasing the footprint of the plant, we think we're pretty close where we need to be. And then the construction window is 24 to 30 months.
Is there a problem for, if not the percentages for legality, go over 300,000? Does water start to drain out of our pipes more slowly? Is there an issue with any amount?
No, it's all regulatory. And if you really look at it, our permit, if you read our permit, what it says is we're still held to the 12-month standard, as long as we don't go over 20% of our 12-month average of our allotted permitted amount. So I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to show the two letters here. We'll talk about that. The letter that went to the state from McKibben Creek.
Okay, but I wasn't talking about legality. I'm talking about what physically happens when I turn on the faucet. We're not gonna be in a position where water starts to.
So what's going to happen before anything starts spilling out is we won't be able to meet our chemical requirements. And you'll see NOVs coming across notice of violation saying that our influent comes in and our effluent goes out, that our effluent quality isn't what it should be,
Which means what?
Yeah.
In terms of operations, then what?
which could mean penalties, could be monetary penalties.
To the village.
Yes.
What would the village do then to reduce usage? Or do we have any conservation efforts that we could employ at that point on the wastewater side?
We have some operational efficiencies that we could work, but mostly what we want to do is we want to stay on track so we don't exceed that 90%.
Worst case is they will put the moratorium in place where we can't add any new homes, reconstruction, so that the plant doesn't spill over with sludge out the top.
I just noticed like in August, one of those years, there's 354. So I'm
Right.
saying, we're not gonna get people sick or do
Yes,
something.
I think that's a big take home message though, because people think that we're ready to have their toilets backing up in our house.
Yeah.
And so that's not the case.
Okay,
That's not the case.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, that is definitely not the case.
right.
thank you. That's what I was looking for.
I know that's.
Next slide, please.
But just to wrap a bow on this little conversation, we just said it might be helpful, Karen and KP, if there was some simple 2 or 3 or 4 sentence, that describes, we're safe. We intend to remain safe. And we're months and years away from ever having it to do with.
We're being proactive to meet
Yeah.
our regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
These are the two letters. The one letter was written by McKibben Creek to the state, informing them that we were going to use June, July, and August, and asking them basically asked them if they want to change our permitting. The letter on the right's their response saying they do not. They appreciate us being proactive and taking that stance and hope we'd look at that going forward, but they wouldn't change our requirements in our permit at all. So when I mentioned earlier that our permit reads 20% exceeding 20% of our 12-month average of our permitted amount, that's how it's still written. Probably would never get there, being a resort community. See, we spike so much the summer 3 months. We probably wouldn't get to that 12, exceed that ever 16 low average. So we don't want to use something that we don't think is practical. So what's practical is looking at June, July, and August. Next slide, please. Right now, we have 196 residential customers. Those also do include commercial residential customers. If I back those out, the number is 1253. We have 165 REUs across the board for non-residential, giving us a total of 1,461 REUs, or 59.3% of build out. Now, when I came up with this, I went to Stephen and said, Stephen, I know you look at it a little differently. He uses different kinds of numbers, and mine was 59.3 and his was 63%. So they're very close. Typical REU statewide is 240. We have special permission from the state to use 237. Again, total structures on the island is 1,309, and the unimproved properties is 827. And that does not include the unbuildable properties, either owned by the land trust or others. Next slide, please.
Say that last number, those last numbers again.
That's 827 for buildable lots,
Okay,
not
so
anything held by the land
By the
trust.
land trust or-
is here.
are the ones that are unbuildable.
Correct.
So those would add to that number.
They would,
Okay. 827.
27.
Thank you.
Again, current capacity is for the plant is 300,000. We're looking at going to 650,000. We're looking at improving or utilizing the 3 SDRs we currently have and almost doubling their capacity. So using this new technology of Aquarita could more than double our capacity. So we went out last June out to Rockford, Illinois to look at a demonstration. That was amazing how they were using this granular type technology to basically process twice as much influent as we have in the same amount of space. In our wastewater, right now we're looking at the summer of 2004 to complete our construction documents and permitting package. We just talked to the engineers, Chris and Jay and I talked to the engineers a day or so ago, and they confirmed that. So we're looking at the summer of 2004. According to build-out numbers of looking at the REUs 120 to 140, and using 35 REUs a year, it really takes us into 2006. But Chris made a good point the other day. We want to be shovel ready.
2026.
2026, sorry. So we wanted to be shovel ready. So we're going to shoot for keep on track for 2024. Also, the things that we're doing is also looking at grants and no interest loans. We haven't any luck yet, but we are working in that direction. An asset inventory assessment grant. We should hear back both in water and sewer, hopefully this month. If we had those assessment grants, we'd get more points. This past year, we split our budgets to water and to sewer versus a combined budget. That will also get us more points. And then we're also working towards a CIP, capital improvement plan, and that would also get us more points. And really, what we're looking for is no interest loans. If we can get them through the state, that would be a win for us. Right now, we're looking at funding the expansion through using just the 2% increase each year in our connection fees. This are annual barge runs and numbers. I thought it was interesting. I put it in here. Public Works, you can see 318 trips plus, utilities 240, and then contractor services another 27. Just to give you the idea of the volume of movement we have with GFL and Island Contracting and our own equipment. Next slide, please. In past years, Public Works has seen a large increase in solid waste, recyclables, and furniture waste and donations. The added increase has taken away from historically focused infrastructure work like road work, cutting, trimming, mowing, beach access, and signage. This surge has required our resources and makes us look at the work order system to make sure we're working efficiently. And also things that we have to look at is seeing we're funded as a municipality. We're supposed to be focusing on providing services to residents. And being an island, I know it presents us with different challenges. And one of those challenges is, how to really separate the commercial side from the residential side. And that's tough. But we're always looking at places, talking to business owners, talking to residents, trying to find out where a lot of our waste is coming from, so that we can focus on doing the right thing, having people be responsible for their own waste streams, and then providing the service we can to our residents. Also, another thing, there's been a big change with, if you look down to damaged fixtures at the bottom, we're talking about signage. Last year, we had about 60 signs we replaced, which made us start thinking about what we could do for sign replacements. And this past year, we purchased a CNC computer-driven router system so we can make signs here in the island. So far this season, we've generated 157 signs. We replaced all the signage down at the harbor, and we're replacing, improving the signage we have on the roadways and increasing some of that signage. here are just some of the major points for the next year. The 10-year capital improvement plan, I think is important. We think as a team is important to develop a 10-year capital improvement plan or CIP to assist in short and long-term planning, project planning and funding. And then the wayfinding signage program for sign replacements and additions. And for the wayfinding program, we are using the February 2015 plan. It has a lot of great information in it. No need to reinvent the wheel there. So we're using that program to move forward. Streets and solid waste facilities and grounds. Want to introduce the use of a roll-off truck to facilitate our solid waste removal, dry sludge, and hauling rock purchases. You'll see that in the slide coming up. We also need to work on fencing, grading, and the asphalt work around public works and contractor services, mostly gravel and grading. Island wide paving and 5-year plan we'll talk about in a few minutes. The stormwater containment areas and overlay parking are also being installed down at contractor services and public works. Wastewater, water and wastewater plant improvements. We're reviewing current operations to improve the raw water and sludge management removal from the island. We want to include the roll-off truck to do that. Implement the water and wastewater plant redundancy programs. You see some pictures coming up. And planning for outdoor odor control projects. The wastewater collection system, lift station repair and maintenance. We're still looking at doing 3 per year. We'll be starting here in the next couple of weeks, doing the 3 initial lift stations. And then the wastewater treatment plant expansion again, shooting for construction drawings and permitting drawings for the summer of 2024.
JP,
It's fall, but it should be summer.
the wastewater collection system lift station repair maintenance plan, that's the program. We're on the 2nd year.
Yeah, we initially started as a 3-year program, but we expanded to a 5-year program because of the cost.
Right. But we've approved and we're presently handling the 1st and 2nd years of that.
First year right now.
First, okay,
They're ordering for the 2nd year.
gotcha.
And then this year, the water distribution for the meter ERT upgrade and central monitoring will be done over the spring and probably not functional till this summer. The water plant expansion planning, the water plant expansion planning is still ongoing in-house. And we're bringing all that up to get the right redundancies in place and also making sure we have the footprint we need to go forward. The well system RO pre-treatment improvement filtration system was just completed last month. And then for motor fleet, we want to put in place for facilities preventive maintenance program, and then the vehicle and heavy equipment inventory and schedule plan for the village's CIP. Next slide, please. This is just an example. This is the last CIP that I did. It was in the town of Selma, but just so you can see what it's going to look like. You see the department on the left, the fiscal year where they're requesting the funding, the name of the project, the address need of for the project, and then which unit or program it belongs to, the total cost, and then how those costs are expended over each fiscal year for the next 10 years. So this only shows 8, but we're going to do here at the village a 10-year CIP. Next slide, please. And if you drill down in the department, this is, for instance, Public Works, it gets more detailed. You have the different projects, again, the need for each, the department, if it's a department or a cross-department program, and the location, again, the total cost and the completion date along with each fiscal year expenditure. Next slide, please. The way finding signs that we're following, again, this is the only one that's made this way right now. That 4x4 post has a slot in it, and then the HDPE sign is slid into it, and then it's secured by some screws. Some of the ones you see up farther up north right now are bolted on. but we're gonna take those down. They're all gonna be done like this. This is at the intersection of North and Muscadine. You could also see the subtle arrow there pointing which way north. As we all know, the other direction is federal. Next slide, please. This is the roll-off truck that we've been talking about. We're looking at maybe spreading the purchase of the truck over 2 years. I mean, that could be bought in phases because you could buy the roll-off portion of the truck and then the knuckle boom assembly, which is the container and the boom arm and the pickup clause would be year 2. And why would we need something like this? Well, our return of investment would be for municipal waste stream. Right now, I think this year we have 53 hauls off the island with wet sludge. Next year, we're looking at using a centrifuge, creating dry sludge that we'd be able to put in regular roll-off containers and take to the landfill. White goods, mattresses, we're currently paying fees to GFL and Island Contracting. Even the price for rock is so high. When we get into the budget season, I'll be presenting some figures and showing you what the return investment be on that. But I wanted to introduce it to you today.
So Zach, you reviewed the return on investments and the PV, and these all pay for themselves?
I haven't had a chance to talk to him about it yet. This will be during the budget
They
season.
do that, yeah.
The 5-year plan, just something to think about. We have approximately 26 miles of paved road. If we're looking at the recent pricing of $100 per linear foot, for total cost to repave the island, somewhere around 13.5 million. So usually, if you were on the mainland, we'd look at a 20-year return. But here, the limited traffic out in the island might be able to push that to 25 or 30 years. But we're still looking, right now, we've been kind of spending a couple $100,000 this year. We spent 600 and change last year. We might want to think about when we put the CIP together about how we're going to do the repaving and how many years we want to spread that over. 25. But we need to make more headway than we've been making in the past, or we just won't catch up.
So it's not gonna be one shot repaving everything, it'll be a little bit all time.
Yes. And again, the advantage of the CIP and putting that plan together isn't just for roads, but it's for buildings and timber bridge and everything we have out there. We can actually plan and look how it's budgeted. So we're looking 10 years out. We're not just looking year to year.
And it'll be a big part of that financial positioning plan too.
I was gonna ask you, does it go down out 10 years? It does?
Right.
And then we haven't accounted for any possible grant or earmark funding that we discussed earlier that we could supplement to catch up. As JP said, we're falling behind. Many years ago, we used to put a lot of money into the annual paving project, 400,000, 500,000, 600,000 annually. And we just hadn't really been doing that because we've been having other costs and needs to pay for.
So I assume there is a plan, what you're gonna do each year, but then there's also unplanned stuff, things that are emergencies and can hurt people. Those automatically get done also, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's what interrupts our schedule because with our teams, we have our regular routines. We have our summer and our winter routines. But when things get bumped is because the phone rang and something's happened. In the contractor services area, we are starting to better utilize the space down there. You can see here where they have put delineation down of where the actual spaces are. The contractors are being assigned spaces. It's been kind of like the wild, wild west down there. We've had people all over the place and not used to parking in the same spot all the time and been some inefficiencies there. So we're looking at that, finding new ways of making it more efficient and also tracking the rentals more. Probably have missed some collections along the way, but going forward, we don't want that to happen. And we're better putting a parking overlay. And once we get all this in place, we'll do a GIS overlay, and then we'll have that on the computer for the contract for the technician that works down there and how he charges that out.
Big part of that, I'm sorry, JP, a big part of that transition, however, has been trying to get Island Contracting out And we've had to work through the transition of the Timber Creek mulch site with the boat and trailer storage area to open up room to get island contract near there for all the reasons we've discussed in the past.
Yeah, if you
And
could
that-
back up 2 slides. One more. Back up, not forward. No, okay. Okay, it's not there. Never mind. Okay. For contractor services like Chris was saying in Public Works, contractor service has been a work in progress. We've been waiting for the fuel dispensers to go in, so we haven't done a lot of marking on the ground. That's the one, thank you. Finally, we have a date on the dispenser installation. It's March 1st. So we've been moving ahead, delineating the spots that won't be impacted. Mostly what you saw on that last slide was them working in the backside. No, you're gonna have to change it. Working in this area, delineating these spots, and then the fuel tanks are here. We have to dig a trench to the new dispensers. They're gonna be in this area. Currently, they're right here. So we haven't improved this area yet, but we're getting ready to, and we're going to grade everything, put the rock in. We have a infiltration pond that needs to go in here, and an infiltration pond that needs to go in here. So those 2 ponds probably put in this summer or next fall. We'll be working, getting the pumps in here, hopefully next month, and then be finishing off the grading and finishing off also the fencing in here so that the 2 gates that you've seen that we've put in can be utilized. This is all going to be the new public works area. Island Contracting has been in this area. As Chris just said, they've moved to Timber Creek. They're in the process of moving all their equipment out. So once this gate, we start utilizing this gate here, this will be all public works. So we'll have compactors here. We have recycling and cardboard here. And then the rest of the parking, the rental facilities and the parking in the back. We're also parking large vehicles here. And with the construction of that infiltration pond, we're going to have to do something different.
So JP, right now, you can take household waste components and drop them in the compactors to the north of the recycling section because the gate's not used. Once that gate closes, that's what you're saying is on the weekends, after hours on the weekend, you will not be able to do that.
No, we'll be open on the weekends.
Okay.
We'll be closing only in the evenings.
Okay,
So, because right now we're finding, we come in the morning, you know, everybody waits for us to leave. We come in the morning, we find all kinds of things in those compactors. Anything from roofing shingles to metal frames to, so we have to get in there and take it out because we can't let it go like that because we won't be able to compact everything.
Right.
Also, we had 1 cardboard container. Right now we have 2. That was something we started just prior to last summer. It worked out real well for us, but staff is really concentrating on putting 1 to start with, potentially 2 cardboard compactors, just like the trash compactors. Now, this is a project we plan on doing in-house. We also have the advantage of working off the electrical services that service those 2 compactors. So the cost, we feel we can keep the costs down, but not this season, but moving forward, want to look more at cardboard compactors. Right now, we mechanically compact them. We have a little battling ram, if you will. I don't know if you've seen it when you're down there, but GFL from their regular cardboard containers on the mainland get about a ton in each one. When they take them off the island, they weigh them. They say we get 3 tons. So we're doing well compacting it, but it's a lot of work and takes man hours. So we're thinking maybe if we get the compactors, they'll work better for us over time.
JP, do we have electronic charging stations for future transition to electrical vehicles for the contractors?
Right now, we have an electrical service right here, and we haven't put all the charging stations in yet for the golf carts. That is an area that we've looked at putting chargers in, and this is another area we're looking at putting chargers in.
Beyond golf carts, are we looking at?
Good point. I haven't yet, but I'll put it in the CIP list.
Mayor, when we did the design, while there was movement going towards a smaller, more compact IC vehicle, the notion of a fully electric vehicle as an IC electric vehicle was not ever discussed.
Right.
Because there was some notion, it just,
It was too early. It wasn't.
yeah, I mean. But we obviously saw the need and we incorporated charging stations for golf cart rentals.
Right.
Next slide, please. Okay, you've seen this, putting the parking overlay down. Okay, beach access repairs. We're looking next year at 9 repairs for a total of 108,000. Normally, the last few years, our repairs have run between 70 and 90,000. If we bump it up a little bit next year, we do 9 beach accesses for 108,000, and we can include installing a wooden access at access 3, which is just a sand path right now, for a total of for another 43,000, which would be a total of 151,000. Once we finish that, we feel that we're caught up with our access repairs to the point that we can go into a preventive maintenance mode. So depending if we do all this work next year, or if we push some of it to the next year, year 1 or 2, we can get to the preventative maintenance point. So that's a huge accomplishment. Next slide, please. A little bit about the wastewater plant. This past year, we put in new raw water filters. Prior to this program going in, we had blended water. 20 to 30% of our well water was reblended into the RO water. So we had some water quality issues with iron and manganese. So these pre-filters are going to eliminate that. Now that we have these in place, all the water from our wells comes through these filters and then returns back into the system. So even our blended water, which wasn't filtered previously, is filtered now. So that should help with our overall water quality.
The water quality coming to our homes, or the water quality going?
Water quality going to your homes.
Okay.
Because historically, 70 or 80% of that water, our well water, went through our RO filters, but the other 20 or 30%
Gotcha.
was raw water.
Gotcha.
Now we're filtering that raw water
Okay.
before we blend it back in.
And that's improved our efficiency on our RO
Right.
membranes.
Because they're not getting as much.
Extends our membrane life, cuts down on chemical use.
Yeah.
So there's savings there too.
Does it increase or improve the quality of the RO going out to the marina bulkhead?
And we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
I guess the answer is no.
We got to figure everything. It does, yes. The short answer is yes, because what we're doing is we're taking this water here. This is going back to the headworks, the wastewater plant. So it's taking it out of that stream, which is the RO discharge. So yes, it does.
I'm not talking about I'm talking about reverse osmosis, not reject water.
Right. Well, the reverse, that water that comes out of the pipe, out of the bulkhead over there, is the reject water from the RO system.
Okay, gotcha. Because I'm seeing this picture of wastewater and I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is the pre-EQ. Usually it's not this empty. We had some issues last summer in June. We had to replace some of the guide poles here that hold the pumps in place. So we went ahead and took it all the way down to see what it looked like. And this you're looking at here, you might think that's a liner. This is a concrete wet well. So this here is grit. This is grit that's accumulated over the years. So it's a sandy, gritty mixture of sludge that we can't move out of here other than going in there and cleaning it. So this spring and next fall, we're going to be cleaning the the pre-EQ, and we want to get this all clean before we put our new screen in. The screen is ordered. The screen is what filters solids out of the influent when it comes into the plant. And so we want to get this cleaned up before we put that into service. You see the guys working down replacing the guide poles. Again, these are the lift stations outside the plant. We have the plant upset filter waste lift station. We've done nothing to these in a very long time as part of this redundancy and maintenance program I had listed on the agenda. And I just wanted to put pictures in here so you could identify a little bit more where they are. The plant sits right here, just out of the picture. This is the upset wet well, and this is the effluent lift station. This is when everything is processed and comes out of the wastewater plant, comes here before it's sent out to the lagoons at the golf course. Next slide, please. Facilities, parks, grounds, and motor fleet is something new that we've done this year. Mike Harris is the superintendent. Just wanted to put this in here. It's a certificate from IFMA. It's a certification for Mike. It's his introductory certification for facilities management. He has a number of these he's going to be going through over the next 2 years. And I just wanted to put this in to remind everybody that we do feel that education is a strong component for not only our superintendents, but for all our techs and everybody that works in the department. And I'd like to note that the last 2 positions that we filled into water plant and wastewater plant operations were people that moved over from Public Works. They went to school, got their certifications, so they're homegrown, if you will. Right now, the average age of a ORC in North Carolina is 59 years old. So they're not easy to come by. You can't get people to move around usually very well for these positions. So being able to hire the guys and educate them in-house and put them to work is a big plus. Next slide, please. This here is just example. This happens to be public safety's list, but this is the vehicle and heavy equipment, 1 page of the spreadsheet. And again, this will be introduced as part of the CIP. But when we've talked about this in previous meetings, and I was asked about it. But excuse me, the vehicle and heavy equipment spreadsheet, it lists all the equipment, but it also gives the depreciation date on the equipment and what year it should go out. So that going forward, there's really no question, no politics about what equipment stays and what goes. As this becomes a formal document, it's part of the CIP, and then we follow the depreciation schedule that's included in that. Next slide, please. Again, facilities, parks, grounds, and motor fleet. Historically, we haven't had much of a preventive maintenance program on buildings. This here is a new component that we put in for the HVAC system at public safety. We've changed some valve configurations, got a lot of homework. We did a lot of homework this spring. The systems are operating as they should right now, and we want to keep it that way. So what we'd like to do is get into the preventative maintenance mode and make sure that not only with public safety, but with all our village buildings, that the HVAC, painting needs, structural wood, things like that, roofing, that we'll get those on a regular schedule and make sure that they're attended to. Next slide, please. Again, there's been a lot of talk recently about the fence, Village Hall and IPC. We are looking at different options for that. We're looking at both a wood and synthetic replacement option. This past year, to get a little bit more life out of these, what we did is we came in and cut the bottoms off all the way across. And that gave us another season for these pickets, but we're going to have to do something soon. We're planning on putting those in the upcoming budget.
And JP, could we also make a point when we're evaluating which ones to use, and we look at not that they shouldn't change their guidelines, but the guidelines that the association has specific requirements for fencing material.
Right.
So if we're looking at the whole island using X except for the village.
No, we follow the rules. I just talked to Carrie, and we just talked about that recently.
Okay, great.
That's an item that'll go in front of the ARC.
Okay.
When you find a solution, let me know.
Well, hopefully these new meetings, we'll be able to share the information.
But I hate the.
It's high maintenance costs.
JP, on this prior slides where you had the equipment, and there's a preventative maintenance program in place. A lot of corporations have them audited by a different team to make sure what was supposed to be done is done and they're up to snuff. on your key pieces of equipment. Is that in place here?
Not right now. So if you don't mind, I'll just step back. What we're looking to do is engaging with Rithers Ravenel engineering firm to make sure that our priorities that we think are the same the engineers think they are. So starting with the CIP, we're making sure that we have a third party that's looking at that to put that together to make sure that if this is something we're going to abide by for the next 10 years, it's going to look for planning and for funding, that was looked at by the engineers. And then the second part of that
Where's
would
the
be
audit?
follow through, which would be to make sure those things are done. And I don't know if it would be part of the audit process, but I haven't talked to Zach about it yet. But lots of times when you have your CIP and you have the expenditures that are attached to it, it becomes part of the audit process. And I don't know if that Duncan will want to check things like that once we get that in place. Do you think, Zach?
I mean, your CIP is just like a roadmap, right?
Right.
For infrastructure.
But then our expenditures are going to coincide.
I didn't mean financial audit.
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about that.
But our expenditures,
talking
I think
about
our expenditures.
Operational
are gonna
audit.
coincide with it.
Yeah, it's the operational audit. The independent people come in to test the equipment to make sure that they are up to snuff with what they should be.
Different audit firm.
Yeah, we can do that.
You can't, but we don't do it now.
We don't do it now.
I'm not saying you should do it. That's not my call. I'm just
We're,
asking, do you do it?
We're in a new day with all the planning that we're looking at doing and establishing preventive maintenance. And we're getting in a better position than we've been in as far as doing more planning. So that's a good point, and I'll make sure we include that. Okay, just to go back over the list, CIP, wayfinding, roll-off truck, fencing, paving, talked about stormwater areas. Is there anything up here anybody has any questions about?
Just quickly, so I'm kind of shocked we haven't had a roll-off truck. I mean, so how is?
We pay for those services.
Got it. They bring an empty roll-off truck over and then they haul it off. Got it.
Correct.
Got it. And you're
The
gonna show us,
cost for those is high.
yeah, you're gonna show us budget time, how we can save money by having
We
it. Perfect. Okay.
So do we have the centrifuge now or is that going to be?
We don't. I'm in discussions with a company that's gonna rent one to us for temporary basis to see, so we can see how it works. Make sure that it's something that benefits us. And if it does, then we'll look
So
at
we
putting
talked
one in
about
a
it
future
Yeah.
budget about purchasing.
Okay.
But it doesn't make sense living, we're living on an island and we're hauling wet sludge. I mean, historically, we thought we were gonna do 33 hauls this year. We ended up doing 53. And what I found out too is we're doing more scientific data collecting now. And for our total suspended solids, not to get too far in the weeds, but the sludge that we have and how thick it is, we've been operating at with the thickness too heavy because we should have been wasting more. We hadn't been wasting more because of the cost of hauling. So we had to look at somehow to reduce that cost of hauling. And one is to take more water out of sludge.
Right. So.
Any other questions?
JP, did we touch really on with the engineering and design, phase 2 engineering design of the wastewater treatment plant expansion? Discussions we recently had related to the budget. We're gonna need to budget X amount, 675,000. And I think we had talked before about timing of getting certain revenues in.
Right.
On new
I have that. wrong.
capital development that's adding demand to the system. And so right now we finished phase 1. The budget for it, we finished it. The question
I have
is,
this right here. You want me to read it quick?
okay, yeah,
We paid for the funding assistance when we looked for the low interest loan. Back last year was $10,000. The environmental information document engineering report was $30,000. And then our preliminary design phase was $227,000. We're going to wrap that up here in March.
Yep.
And then once we wrap that up in March, that leaves our final design and specification phase, which also includes permitting, which puts us just at $700,000.
right. So the question is, can we get approval to keep moving forward on phase 2? And which will require a budget amendment? Or we just wait until July 1st to fund it.
Mhm.
We can keep the engineers moving. Because we want to get the permits and get the engineering design done to get the permits to be shovel ready. So it's just, March, April, May, June months, we're in a sort of a holding pattern. Is that,
What I'm hearing operationally, preference is to keep it moving.
of course,
Yes,
Right.
yes.
we just wanted to work with Zach on the financials to be sure we've got the funds we can cover some of that work with with what we got in the enterprise fund
Some of the connection fees coming.
and some connection fees coming in. The connection fees, of course, won't come in until they start sheathing.
Right.
But we see making progress every day. But yeah, so maybe we come in March with that amendment. That way we can tell Tony and the guys to keep pushing forward. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is March too late? Do we need to do it tomorrow?
No, we're fine.
She's on schedule.
He said he could work with us a month or two at the most.
Okay.
I said, you don't think Bald Head Island's good for it? Yeah, it's good.
Okay, any other questions?
I have one about, so do we? Obviously, our cardboard is getting recycled because they're
Yes.
weighing it and all that. Do we know? If our recycle thing is just like being thrown away because it's so contaminated or,
The cardboard is not,
right,
the commingle I can't speak to. The commingle, we have some challenges.
right. And so I guess part of the question is, I'm assuming that we pay more for hauling off recyclables than we do trash. So basically, you know what I'm saying is if we're going out there and recycle, but it's not getting recycled anyway. Do we keep putting it in that bin or do we do something different?
Let me get the numbers from GFL and see what our contaminant numbers are.
Okay,
Because when a container gets contaminated, then they do dump the whole thing.
yeah, I know.
I just don't know how many of those are getting stamped
Yeah,
and dumped. I don't know. Let me check into that.
because I mean, then we either make some decisions or we make a big public campaign on.
We've been looking at different ways of making it easier to put materials in those containers. It's not the easiest. You've all been there. You're raising your arms up, you're emptying a bag, or you're throwing the whole bag in there. And throwing the bag in there could be part of the contaminant problem.
And there's a bunch of those.
And so let me look into it, but we're looking at place, maybe put an elevated deck up, so you go up, so when you spill things in there, maybe it's waist high than over your head. We're looking at talking to GFL about different kinds of containers with an open top. So we've been talking, but we just haven't made a resolution.
I mean, I guess the question is, would that make a difference?
Right.
Is that really the problem of,
Well, I think what we do
Doing
is
that
we have a 1 year effort to clean our recycling. And if
not,
the community can't do it, then
then
we're just gonna save money and
right. I mean, in places are doing that and I hate it, but
Yeah,
How substantial is that cost difference?
I'll have to get back to you. I don't know.
I mean, it's some, I know. I mean, it's got to be some.
I'm sure it is, yeah.
and we could help call on the association to help communicate that, whenever the time comes, if we ever need to push that kind of,
That's
they could help us with that.
so since it's just us here, are there really cameras out there?
Yes.
I just wanted to know. I've wondered that every time I go, where's that camera?
So after the guys leave and we find roofing shingles, we contact the people.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you won't be contacting me. I'm good. I don't think, but
Because
I wondered.
again, it's, the municipality is supposed to be taking care of the waste stream for the residents.
Yes.
And being on an island, sometimes a challenge with that. So, cardboard is a good example. Cardboard comes from everywhere. Doesn't just, and everybody lives here, or not everybody, but most people live here. So it's probably coming from a resident, but
Right.
is that the right stream for it? Probably not. We have some business owners on the island that have their own cardboard programs. We have some that don't. We have a lot that have their own trash programs, which is great help. In a way it should be, because commercial should be commercial, residential should be residential. So it's something we struggle with. And I've been talking to Karen about doing some more education and talking to Karen too about doing some meets with business owners, getting together and just talking about some of the challenges so that we can kind of work it all out together. But I want to try to reduce the cost to the residents as much as possible. And if there's a conflict there, then I'll bring it to Chris and we'll talk about it.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, just a quick comment. I remember when, Chris, when you were looking to look for replacements for public works and public service and public utilities, and you came forward with the idea of public services director, I initially scratched my head, we really want to do this. And every day I've learned that was the right call. And today really showed the value of having somebody that could spend his time strategic planning and not having to be the operator on either side all the time, that he's got a staff in place doing the operating, so JP can think about these things and develop a CIP. And I mean, I keep telling Jerry and I keep having this conversation about why are we just now getting around to this? Well, we're an evolving island. We're young. We're still young.
Very young.
But this is another, I think, great example of how we're moving in the right direction. So
Yeah.
commend you for your forethought. Great hire. Thank you for what
Thank
you're
you.
doing.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you. I will say that the addition with Mark Johnston on the project manager side has really helped
Good.
JP, but in concept, the two under public services is doing pretty good.
Yep.
And Mark's been a great hire too, and he brings a lot of experience to the team. And he's also working with the superintendents and helping them out, because we've just elevated them all up. That's great support for them. And he's also spent a lot of time putting SOPs together, because we don't have a lot of written SOPs, how important they are.
Mhm.
So that's the muscle memory everybody needs, right?
Absolutely.
So we're getting those done, and he's been a great addition.
Great.